Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I will be going through the presentation. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat, and when I see them, I will respond to them immediately. So let's begin. So obviously, the course is handling property insurance claims, the do's and don'ts. The majority of what we're going to be talking about is large-scale hurricane claims, which consist of the wind portion and then also flood damage. So we'll kind of talk about those things, but it's also applicable to your day-to-day stuff. So a lot of those things may include pipe breaks, fires. We've even had car burst building, recent flooding. So any issues that have property damage directly to the property and what the reconstruction is going to be like, we're going to dive into. So everything should be applicable to your day-to-day operations. So to begin, I just want to give you some background about our company. We've been in business since 1988. We're corporately based out of Tampa. I would like to think we're Florida's leading public adjusting company. We're heavily involved in our industry, lobbying on behalf of policyholders throughout the state and on a nationwide basis through organizations like the Florida Association of Public Adjusters and the National Association of Public Adjusters. We carry licenses in 30 plus states, and we've handled thousands of commercial and residential claims in our nearly 40-year history. Here's a little background into our company, kind of touched on this previously, but many of our board members and leadership have been elected to these positions on these national associations. The founder of our company, Ray Altieri Jr., was chosen by his peers in the industry in 1993 to be the first president of the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And he was heavily involved after Hurricane Andrew in Tallahassee, preventing a lot of insurance reforms that would have negatively impacted a lot of insurance consumers and policyholders throughout the state. The recent legislation that got passed 2 years ago, we were actively lobbying behind the scenes, meeting with leadership, meeting with Governor DeSantis. A lot of what was proposed was going to be even worse than what got passed. So we're heavily involved in just making sure policyholders are protected through legislation and other lobbying efforts. A little bit about me. From Chicago originally, went to the University of Kentucky, went to FAU for grad school. I've been a public adjuster for 6 years. I'm licensed in several states throughout the country. I've previously spoken to organizations like BOMA, CAI, the National Apartment Association, and the Self-Storage Association, talking all things insurance claims. Prior to this, I used to work in sports and Live Nation. I used to sell sponsorships and activate those as well. Love pickleball. I'm a terrible golfer, and I love live music, and I'm a huge fish guy, so I've been over 60 fish shows. All right, so about the class. We're going to touch on the insurance cycle, what that looks like, your basic insurance requirements for condo associations, what you're supposed to do ahead of time, and then after the event happens, and then what not to do, which might be even more important than what you're actually supposed to do. And then what your requirements are after the loss, and then we'll address any questions you may have. So let's start with the insurance cycle, right? At the beginning of the year, or throughout budgeting season, you're going to look at that biggest line item in your budget, which is probably insurance. So you buy it, right, to protect your property in case the worst thing imaginable happens and your property sustains significant damage, and you don't want to have to charge assessments or take out loans and cause that financial burden. It's there to protect your asset. Who do you buy it from? That's going to be your agent, your broker. We always recommend to go with independent agents and independent brokers who are not beholden to just one insurance company. It's just like any industry. There's a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, don't look out for the best interest of their client. And you got to be careful with a lot of these agents, especially in South Florida. There's a lot of people who, get paid on the back end, who get kickbacks and nice trips from some of these larger insurance companies. So, they want to place you in a policy with them. Just make sure, you have a good relationship with your agent and broker, and you trust them. And if you're not getting, what you need, don't be afraid to shop around. And then, how do you know if you have enough insurance? Well, we'll kind of dive into that, but you just want to make sure that the total insured value basically covers what it costs to rebuild your property. And then, when do you use it? In the worst case scenario, not all property damage requires filing an insurance claim. We consult on a lot of damage when property managers, have a pipe break, they'll call us, or they notice a leak in the roof, or they have a fire, but it was maybe just a microwave that caught on fire in one of the units. That might not necessarily require the association to file an insurance claim. So, if it's not going to reach the deductible, probably not worth filing. Just pay for it, and maybe do a small assessment. But every claim you file goes on your claim history, and that can impact your rates at renewal. So it's very important to know when and when not to file a claim. So let's dive into condos and HOAs. It's important to understand the responsibilities of what the association covers and what the unit owner covers. And a lot of this gets mixed up, especially after hurricanes. Those things can change. A lot of usually it's the common elements that are insured by the condo. And then during, any other event, and throughout the year in non-emergency situations, it's covered by the individual unit owner. So condominiums are governed by the Condominium Act, Chapter 718 of Florida statutes. Basically, it just states that you own your individual unit, but there's an undivided interest in all the common areas, and those are required to be properly insured and to provide, minimum insurance coverage based on those state guidelines. So obviously, it's up to individual associations to mandate that their individual unit owners get their own insurance. Some don't require that, but it can also get, those types of situations when, let's say, a pipe breaks in one of the individual unit owners, or they have a leak that they didn't notice for several weeks, and the water seeps down into the unit below. That's going to go against the unit owner individually under their insurance, and there's going to be a lot of subrogation of the two insurance companies between the one who caused it and the one who had the damage, basically fighting back and forth without the association getting involved. Condominiums are governed by their bylaws and the condominium docs. Those docs may require certain coverages more so than the state statutes. It's up to each condominium to vote on what additional coverages they want. One of the big things I will say that we noticed after Hurricane Ian, we handled about 110 condo associations in Fort Myers and Sanibel Island. I would say 25% of those did not have flood coverage. They weren't mandated to get it. They thought it was prohibitively expensive. They didn't get it. And the damage that is caused by the storm surge is not covered under your regular wind and hurricane coverage. So all the flooding, all the electrical that gets damaged on the first floor or second floor, all the cleanup of that debris, they had to bore out of pocket, and that can be millions of dollars to repair. So if you don't have flood coverage, I would recommend calling your agent as soon as this is done, asking them how much it costs, and get some bids on that. It pays very well, and it can save you literally millions of dollars, because the storm waters that are going to come through, especially in South Florida, are going to be anywhere from 7 to 11 feet high. Just heard a weatherman talk about it yesterday at a luncheon I attended. And that you're talking about your first floor, your parking garages, a lot of your electrical, your lobby, and even, second floor units getting flooded out as well. Additionally, With flooding, comes other issues such as mold, and that can, spread throughout the building. So highly recommend getting a flood policy. And that goes for your individual homes as well. Your regular homeowner policy does not cover flood. So even if you aren't mandated to get it, you don't live in a flood zone, just assume that it's going to flood. And you want to make sure you have that property coverage because, again, with Hurricane Ian, I literally talked to at least 50 homeowners who didn't have flood insurance. They basically got no money from the insurance company and had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace their property and repair their structures. A lot of people were forced to sell their property as is and just walk away. It was pretty terrible, and those are awful conversations to have. So we'll go into these minimum requirements. So if it's an uninsured event, maintenance or remodeling, the unit owners are responsible to pay that cost. So, we're talking about, primarily windows, paint, those types of improvements to the property. After a hurricane, though, windows are covered by the condo association insurance policy. So even if people were upgrading their windows to storm impact, the association their policy will replace all the windows throughout the condo. The minimum requirements on the policy are to carry enough coverage to return the property to the original state, and basically return it to pre-loss condition. That's the goal of insurance, is to get you back to pre-loss condition. So it'll cover all those elements that were originally installed. One of the things that I highly recommend as well, talking to your agent about, is having code upgrade coverage in your policy, because if you have older buildings, especially ones that were built before like 96, the codes were upgraded then. With code upgrade coverage, you're gonna reach your policy, but then to bring things up to code requires additional money. So that's typically a percentage of the total policy. So you're looking at anywhere from $500,000 to another $1 million in code upgrade coverage, to upgrade wiring, upgrade the roof, any other necessary incremental improvements to bring it up to current code. So that is a highly beneficial policy that endorsement that we recommend having in your policy if it's not in there already. And when we talk about adding coverage, most agents are willing to add coverage because they get paid on those premiums. So they'll be happy to hear that, and they'll do everything in their power to bind those coverages for you. So again, with these minimum requirements, you need to carry a replacement cost policy to cover all the common elements of the association. So we're talking about the fenestration system. So that's the roofing, the exterior, and the windows as well. They're supposed to be, the replacement cost value is calculated on what it costs to, repair it. It's not what the current market value is. So, even though the units may have appreciated in value and now the total condominium association is worth, let's say like $100 million, they're not going to insure it for that value. They're going to insure it for the reconstruction costs. So, it might just cost $50 to $60 million to, replace the roof, the windows, everything that was originally installed in the unit. There's a common misconception that just because it goes towards your personal property or your home as well, just because your house is worth, $1 million on Zillow doesn't mean that you're going to be insured for that total value. It's going to be what it costs to rebuild, which could be, $600,000, $700,000. And then again, unit owners are responsible for insuring their own units. So let's kind of go into disaster preparedness. It's critically important, and I'm sure you guys have worked on this before, to have a program to identify your insurance, go through your insurance policies, understand those coverages, understand what may be missing, and what, is insured, what isn't insured, and how that affects, the association and the individual unit owners. One of the services we offer is a policy review. So we'll go through it, look for any problematic language, things such as, wind-driven rain exclusions, which basically means they're not going to pay you for anything unless your roof gets ripped off and water starts rushing in, or your windows blow out and water starts, gushing in. A lot of these hurricanes, property just sits there for 8 hours just getting bombarded with rain, and just the sheer amount of water starts seeping through. They're not going to cover that if there's a wind-driven rain exclusion. So we go through it, explain your coverages, explain any gaps, try to help identify things that may be lacking. Another common misconception is that the flood coverage or your regular policy will cover elements such as your pool, parking structures, tennis courts, any additional amenities that may be on the property. Unless it's specifically stated in your property, it's not covered. And those pool repairs can be millions of dollars. So that's something you want to talk to your agent and make sure you have coverage for. So, along with that, understanding your policy, and then do you have a comprehensive plan for recovery? Do you know what vendors you're going to use in case the worst thing happens? When we consult with a lot of these associations, we, create this disaster playbook. So everybody, understands, what they're supposed to do before the storm, during, after, right? So this is like, your basic checklist of what to do, what to board up, precautionary measures to take, alerts to send to unit owners, your emergency vendor contact list. Make sure you have these people in place before the storm, because when something happens, there's going to be, these people are going to be extremely busy. And unless you have a pre-existing relationship, they're not going to be able to make it to your property. And the people who are going to be able to make it to your property are going to be storm chasers from out of state. You're going to have ServPro Iowa here, who's never, mitigated hurricane water damage before, and they're going to be in there trying to figure it out on the fly, right? Like, you don't want your property to be the first one that they've ever worked. So make sure you have these relationships in place. And then afterwards, it's a basic checklist. So this is something we put together for our boards. Preparing before the storm, you're going to assemble your team. We like to get involved from the very beginning. As public adjusters, we kind of quarterback the recovery process. These insurance companies are going to be taking losses in the hundreds of millions of dollars. They are in the business of collecting money and limiting what they pay out. So, we look at it like, would you let the IRS do your taxes? Probably not, right? It's a game that they created, that the insurance companies created. They play it every day. We're licensed to the state of Florida to represent your interest through the insurance claim process, and we can kind of guide you through, the claim itself, but also managing the reconstruction and how to deal with tenants, and just making sure that the recovery process goes smoothly. So one thing to understand is there's multiple types of adjusters. There are staff claims adjusters who are direct employees of the insurance company. So, State Farm has their State Farm adjusters. Then there's independent adjusters who are claims adjusters, and their name is kind of misleading because they're not necessarily independent. They work as a contractor for a multitude of insurance companies or self-insured firms, self-insured properties. But at the end of the day, they're still going out there, they're assessing damage, and they're sending their reports back to the insurance company. And the insurance company will then make their determination on how much they want to spend, or how much money they want to release based on those findings. And then there's public adjusters like us who represent you through the claims process. This is a government study from several years ago. It showed policyholders who had representation received higher settlements than going at it alone. So even the government thinks that we're worth hiring. So now let's kind of get into what the insurance claims, like what that process looks like. So the do's and the don'ts. So before the storm, biggest thing you can do is make sure all insurance policies and financial documents are, you have paper copies that are in secure waterproof bags, and then also uploaded to the cloud. Ensure that your evacuation plans are current, your backup systems are fully functional, and identify any potential building envelope hazards. So basically anything on the property that could turn into a projectile. So, if you have a pool, making sure that all the cabanas are taken down, or, chairs are brought inside. Anything, that's going to fly away can cause massive damage, to the structure and to people. As the storm's approaching, one of the things you should be doing is walking your property, taking video of the exterior. If you're able to get on the roof, take photos of the roof, relay that to your individual unit owners to do video and picture walkthroughs of their own units. Because one of the big things that insurance companies come back and say is, oh, that's pre-existing damage. Oh, we're not gonna pay for that. It was in disrepair beforehand. If you're able to show, what the property was days before the storm, it just kind of cuts out one of their legs from underneath them. Make sure you have your emergency contact list in place that's readily identifiable, and you can share that information with board members and unit owners as well. And then we already talked about having your vendors in place. So those are critical steps to take as the storm is approaching. Obviously, during the storm, follow all the mandatory and evacuation instructions. I know it's Florida. I know a lot of people think, oh, I lived through, this hurricane a couple years ago. It's no big deal. Your property can be replaced. Your life can't. So that's the way we look at it from our perspective. And then, as CAMs, take all the proper safety measures for your occupants and yourself. There's going to be, I'm sure some of you have elderly or, handicapped tenants. There's evacuation centers you can take them to ahead of time. Reiterate to them to leave the premises. You can always come back. It's not worth dying for. And then afterwards, contact all emergency organizations as necessary. So there's going to be FEMA, there's going to be the National Guard, there's going to be your local fire departments. So, there's going to be a point of contact assigned. Make sure you're communicating with them to get back to your property, to have them look at your property to make sure it's safe to go back inside. And coordinating with them can be extremely beneficial to being the first ones back in your building to survey the damage and get an idea of the condition of the building. So after the storm, communication is key in these situations. You have to understand, a lot of people forget, when a large scale disaster happens, and this is going to be especially true for South Florida, a lot of the communication systems get knocked out for an extended period of time. When they come back online, they still short out and reception is terrible. Bridges get destroyed. So access to certain properties, or, if your property is on an island or on the beach, it's going to be extremely difficult to get out there. Then once you're out there, sand's going to be all over the place and driving is going to be nearly impossible. So, people are going to want updates. You're going to be talking to a lot of stakeholders, communicating with each other. Just make sure, you have a good communication plan, whether it's, through email, through a Gmail listserv, whatever it is, through, Facebook groups, WhatsApp chats. Just make sure you have a communication system in place beforehand. Again, identify potential life safety issues. So we're talking about loose wires, electrical vehicles that were swamped with water that could potentially explode. That's a situation where you want to call the fire department to have them take care of those vehicles and get those out of there. That constantly happened in Hurricane Ian. Several days after the storm came through and the waters cleared, these Teslas were just exploding in these parking garages. So you want to look at that. You want to look at loose debris. There may be loose tiles on the roof, down wire. Just there's so many life safety issues. It's extremely important to be aware of those, or else you might be liable if something happens. If somebody comes on site too early, wants to, get inside their unit, a lot of bad things can happen. Next thing is, restoring building functions. So obviously, everybody wants to get back into their property as quickly as possible, and they want their power back on immediately. You have to understand that like temporary power is not covered under your flood policy or your windstorm policy. So that is going to be a cost that gets bored. There are ways to build it into the claim, but it has to go under like a certain bucket of money and kind of classified as like a mitigation cost. It gets a little bit into the weeds. Our adjusters know how to handle that, but be careful getting a generator out there because it costs a lot of money and it's not always covered by insurance. And we've come into situations where, these associations get a lien put on their property or have to pay like a $500,000 power bill to somebody who came out with a generator for like 2 to 4 weeks. Next is, identify the damaged areas and potential mitigation solutions. So it's written into your policy. You have duties in the event of a loss. One of the biggest things is preventing the damage from getting worse. So that includes, boarding up windows, taking out, wet carpet, making drywall cuts to prevent mold growth. So the several days and the first 2 weeks after the storm are critical to preserving not only your claim but also the health of the overall building. You don't want your building turning into a science experiment. After Hurricane Ian, there's still we were going to properties months later that had like no mitigation work done that just smell awful. None of the wet debris has been taken out. Those people are going to get paid zero. They're probably going to have to demo the building. Everyone's going to lose their financial interest. So it can definitely go south pretty quick. Preserve all evidence. So when we say preserve all evidence, you want to treat your property in the immediate days after the storm as essentially a crime scene. You want to make sure that the insurance company sees all the damage. And one of the things that a lot of these mitigation companies like, ServPro, Paul Davis, they just come in and they just start tearing things out. If they're going to start doing that, make sure they're taking photos of everything that they're taking out. Make sure that the dumpsters remain on site, that they aren't being taken away. You want the insurance company to see everything and document it. When they just start hauling those trailers out of there, they're basically just destroying evidence and taking it off site. And unless you document it properly, there's no way to get paid for that. And one of the things we do when we get involved from the beginning is basically controlling that mitigation contract. We're like, look, your initial scope of work is just boarding up these windows, setting up these blowers, doing your basic drywall cut, and kind of limiting their scope. And then after the adjuster comes and we get, a verbal go ahead to start making these other repairs, yeah, go ahead and start doing this work. But a lot of these mitigation companies get paid on how long they run their blowers, how much debris they take off. So they're going to do as much as they can, which eats into your limits of insurance, which eventually, comes off what you need to rebuild the property. So be very careful when working with a lot of these contractors. Obviously, review the post-loss checklist that we provide in our pre-loss program, or anybody you work with ahead of time, or one that you create yourself. Just go bullet by bullet, going through that checklist and taking care of those individual tasks. And then, from a mental health perspective, like it's going to be a very difficult situation. You're going to have a lot of people asking you a lot of questions. You're going to have storm chasers, blowing up your phone, showing up on site. Just take a deep breath. Problems aren't going to be solved in a day. Be realistic in the rebuilding time frame. It's anywhere from 6 months to like 2 years, depending on the severity. The insurance claim process is painfully slow. We do everything we can to keep it moving and get money released and get people out there and keep that process moving. But you also have to remember that these insurance companies don't just insure your building. They insure hundreds, if not thousands, of buildings. And these guys that are coming out to assess your property, you might be the 10th property that they're looking at that day, or they just have like a massive caseload. They're not going to give it the attention that it needs. They're going to get backlogged with claims. You're just getting put into like another queue line. That's why it's important to have representation and people who have those relationships with the carriers already in place to bump your property to the top of the line. And the sooner you're able to get out to your property, assess the damage, begin the insurance claim process, the further towards the top of that queue line you're going to be. And it's basically the early bird gets the worm. So you're going to get paid first. And several months later, when they're, these insurance companies have to do their quarterly filings and they realize they're taking a massive loss, they're going to delay payment even more. So their quarterly stock profit doesn't go down and their stock price doesn't get affected. Like, it's a whole game that they play with holding back money and the timing of when they release the money. So that's why it's important to have somebody on your side that understands how that game is played to make sure your property is properly taken care of throughout the claims process. So here's examples of life safety and mitigation. This is a property we worked in Hurricane Ian. As you can see, the first floor is completely blown out. They had about 15 feet of storm surge. So obviously, you can just see like down wires, debris everywhere, sharp objects pointing out of the ceiling, and trip hazards everywhere. So we talk about assembling your team. Obviously, we're biased. We think you should use a public adjuster. We hope you choose us to kind of quarterback this for you. But some of the things you'll need are security to prevent looters from coming in, from stealing copper wire, from damaging the property even further. You're going to need a roofer to make temporary repairs, to shore up any holes or gaping issues with the roof system. Electrician, we're talking about wiring, restoring power, elevators, air conditioning, and then your emergency services contractor. So potential landmines to avoid. These are some of the major things that we've seen that have caused claims or recoveries to go sideways. So, deductibles. Some of them can be prohibitively expensive. A lot of people, we've seen a lot of associations that think, oh, like, our hurricane deductible is $1 million, $1.5 million, where we don't have enough damage to substantiate filing a claim. Have somebody come in, assess the damage, do an analysis, and figure out if that's actually true. If it's not, like if it's not going to reach the deductible, then yes, you're going to end up having to charge assessments. But typically after these hurricane situations, there's going to be, you're going to reach your deductible and then some. You can also talk to your agent about what's called a deductible buyback policy. Essentially, it's a hedge against that $1 million deductible. So, you pay, they typically range from like 20, don't quote me on this, I'm not an agent, anywhere from like $20,000 to $100,000 they are going to pay to cover that $1 million. So we've worked with a couple of associations who did it, and it literally saved them millions of dollars. I touched on this earlier, your duties in the event of a loss. So you are required by your policy to fulfill some obligations outlined in the policy, and if you don't, that can be grounds for denying a claim, underpaying certain aspects of the claim. So some of those can be notifying the insurance company in time, which is usually 60 days. Obviously, you have 2 years to file a hurricane claim. We would hope you notice damage within that time frame. You have the obligation to prevent the damage from getting worse. So, like we talked about, properly mitigating, and then you have to cooperate with the insurance company investigation. So you can't obstruct them. You can't prevent them from going to the property. Just dealing with these adjusters, they're human. They're stressed out too. They've got a large claim load. Just be nice to them. It's amazing in this industry, like how far kindness goes towards these guys and getting them to pay stuff. And if you're, being combative, you're just like not going to help your case. So, cooperate with them, show them around the property, be careful what you say to them, because they will, potentially use that against you. So less is more, unless you actually know. And even if you're, if you know what they're asking you, give them the answer. But if you're unsure, just say, I'm not sure. And we've seen a lot of claims go sideways because the facility manager, took them around and, they want to brag about how involved they are in the property and how long they've been there and how well they know the property. And they can give insight to the insurance company on something that they thought was innocuous, but ends up being grounds for denying certain aspects of the claim. So, keep those guys away from the adjusters. It should just be, you escorting them through the property, or, if you hire representation, such as a public adjuster will walk the property with them and kind of, show them the damage, talk about coverages, go through estimates, but just make sure you cooperate in general. And then, limitations. So, there's always carve outs in policies. Sometimes they're pretty extreme. We talked about wind-driven rain exclusions. We talked about, docks, marinas, pools, other amenities. Unless it's specifically listed as a scheduled location or outlined in the policy, they will not pay for it. So, make sure you fully understand what's in there. Have somebody, comb through your policy, explain all the coverages that may be in there. There's also some ambiguous language such as, marring or cosmetic endorsements. And what they say is with those, just because it looks bad doesn't mean we're going to pay for it. It's still functional and it's still working the way it was designed to. There's arguments to be made around that where, it's like, no, it's actually affecting the functionality. This needs to be replaced because of XYZ. So it's just another vague endorsement, it's just another vague subsection in your policy to give them an out to justify not paying for something. And then lastly, this is probably the biggest landmine that we see are storm chasers and contractors. So there's a lot of people who, flock in from out of state. They might not be insured. They might not be licensed. Make sure anybody you contract with, you properly vet, just a quick Google search, look at their past ratings, ask for references, ask for copies of their insurance, licensing, and bonding. Preferably they're local, to that area or based in Florida. There's a lot of people who will come in from out of state and operate under like a local license, and, get paid as a contractor. So, just ask them specifically if they've ever worked this type of project or if they've worked in Florida before, or like how many hurricane related projects have they worked. Just make sure you're asking good, diligent questions and don't just necessarily sign with the first person, that comes up to your property, with a ton of equipment. Be very, very careful, read the contracts. There's some like terrible, there's just some like terrible legal language in there that can lead to, extremely high bills, liens, legal action. There's also like assignment of benefit clauses where basically they just take over the whole claim and, control that reconstruction process, and then be very clear with, what scope of work you want them to perform at the time. Because unless you control that, they will do everything. So, just be careful with what they're doing, and also ask for documentation as they progress. Make sure they're taking photos, they're documenting everything that they're doing. We've seen a lot of terrible situations where these contractors just go way too fast and just jack up their rates and like price gouge people, and it can be like a prolonged legal battle. We've successfully like negotiated with them to like, reduce their bills. We review, what they're charging hourly, which can be like obnoxious in a hurricane situation. So, having a professional that understands what they're charging, can be extremely beneficial. So after the storm, don't panic. You have somebody working with you to kind of like guide you through this. You have a plan that you've prepared for. You have your vendors in place. You're not going to work with anybody that's just swinging by. Obviously, don't provide like too much information. Only provide like what you know. Again, words matter, and don't necessarily start like rebuilding until you know that, the insurance company has seen everything. The insurance company has agreed to pay for it, and you're not going to be, tearing out, property or structures that the insurance company hasn't seen yet. So after the storm, what are successful steps to managing, what are the steps to managing a successful outcome to your claim, right? So follow your plan, clearly lay out what the unit owner versus the condo is responsible for. This is, when we get involved in a claim, this is typically what we send to the boards to forward, and to the manager to forward to the unit owner and the response and the association. Or basically it breaks down, everyone's like, is this covered by what? Right. So you've got unit owner in the association, and then usually you have wind and flood. So this chart basically shows what's covered by whom. And it basically covers every element in a structure. It's basically 4 pages long, listing out, every different item, and that should help quell a lot of the questions that you have coming from a lot of these unit owners. Then we're talking about resumption of operations occupancy. Everybody wants to get back in their unit as quickly as possible. Everybody wants to rebuild as quickly as possible. Rushing that process can be very costly and can negatively impact the claim. Like, you want to go step by step. You want to safely do it. You don't want to, use inferior products, rush the construction, and then you have issues down the road. Take your time. Right, the difference between like 6 and 7 months in the short time frame, is a lot. But a year or 2 years from now, that month can be, can make a huge impact on construction. Communication, hierarchy, all those types of things. And then, managing your insurance proceeds. So one of the big things is getting like an initial payment at the beginning of the claim to cover your mitigation costs and begin the approved aspects that have already been approved for reconstruction. So that avoids having to charge assessments, taking out bridge loans, dipping into reserves, right? Like, you want to exhaust your insurance proceeds first, and then if there's like a delta, or you didn't have enough coverage and you're short a couple $100,000, then yeah, look at those other possibilities. But don't just immediately assess people to cover the cost of mitigation. Like, there's ways to use the insurance money first, get a large initial payment, and then the rest of the claim will be settled in the coming months. And then lastly, right, having good quality work performed, complying with local codes and ordinances, bringing your building up to date. It sounds terrible, but sometimes with older properties, you were saving to do these CapEx improvements. You just had your 40-year inspection. You got a laundry list of things that need to be taken care of in the coming years. Sometimes, being on the outer band of a hurricane might be the best thing that like happened to the property. You're going to get to like do those projects, rebuild your property, and doing it as you see fit, and, bringing it up to current code. So we have seen, we've worked with a lot of associations that were budgeting for future projects, and, they were able to use their insurance proceed money to make all the repairs and do everything that they wanted to do. And then we kind of get into, why is a proper recovery important, and what are the financial aspects for everybody involved? So obviously, you're protecting investment value, preserving the building to safeguard its investment. Everyone in the association has a financial interest in the building and maintaining their property value. So, quick restoration, prevents the further depreciation of that and value loss. So it's already bad. You don't want to make it worse. maintaining business continuity. So, preserving the building and minimizing those downtimes and having a quick response and like minimal disruptions, allows you to rebuild quicker, resume the operations faster, especially if you have like businesses or anything, operating in the first floor or restaurants on site, anything like that that's generating revenue. You want to make sure that you can resume that as quickly as possible. We're talking about long-term sustainability. So, preserving the building, rebuilding it up to code, that just helps the long-term investment of the property. Reputation management. This is huge. We worked with so many property management companies, and we've seen where how they handle a hurricane claim on a property is the reason for why they either get rehired or fired. And the way they've handled it with across their portfolio of properties, can affect their reputation among other buildings, among the industry. We saw a lot of property management companies that just like bungled the response and lost a lot of business. And we also saw it the other way where, some of these guys were rock stars going out of their way, communicating effectively, and word spread around the area, and they were able to sign up more clients the following year. Compliance and legal obligations. You have, legal obligations as outlined by your association documents. There's a lot of things that can end up, in a lawsuit, especially when there's a lot of money on the line. So, you just want to make sure that you're meeting those obligations. And then, insurance and financial considerations. We already kind of touched on those. You want to reduce your out-of-pocket repair expenses. You want to preserve property value, especially if there's like absentee owners or there's people with like multiple condo units. You want to preserve and maintain as much of that value as possible. And we'll kind of just go into, what the forecast is. We can talk about, the insurance market, but, whether or not you believe in climate science, evidence is pretty obvious that there's going to be, the number of events is increasing, the severity of those events is increasing, and the cost to make repairs is increasing. So, you have your insurance policy. It's there for you to use it when something happens. Make sure you do it right when the opportunity arises. This is just, what happened last year. So everyone in Florida has been affected by rising insurance costs. It's not just limited to Florida, it's nationwide. Yes, properties, yes, your insurance policies in Florida are increasing, because of some of the recent legislation and fewer carriers writing in Florida. But the main driver of that is the global cost of reinsurance. So we're talking about the total amount of insured losses. All these insurance companies have somebody that insures them. And it's typically Lloyd's of London. And when they're taking on all these losses, they have to charge more to these insurance companies. And then insurance companies pass those costs on to you. So, hailstorms and fires and tornadoes in the Midwest drive up everybody's cost. But hurricanes and same with hurricanes in Florida, they drive up the Midwest costs. And then, like the regional hazards drive up those regional costs. But everybody's insurance is going up, and it's generally because of the global cost of reinsurance. Going to go into some case studies. So here are some things that we've worked in the past. This is from Hurricane Zeta. This association initially got $50,000, believe it or not, for flooding and wind damage. And at the end, we were able to get them $4.2 million to make all the repairs. This was one in Hurricane Ian that we worked. They initially got $5 million, which is pretty good. But they realized that there was a massive gap between what the contractors needed and, to repair everything and what they were paid. And we came in and we were able to get them $10 million more. And then lastly, this was one that we worked and Hurricane Ian as well. This took about 8 months. We were brought in from day one. So we secured an advance payment of $4 million from the insurance company that was paid within like 6 weeks. So they were able to pay for all the mitigation and cleanup. As you can see, there's debris everywhere. There were boats strewn across the property. Every roof was torn out. Debris everywhere, windows blown out. So we were able to get $4 million to cover the mitigation costs, pay the contractors deposit to start the reconstruction within $40 million about 8 months later. This is a testimonial from the board president. I'm not going to play it for you. It's on our YouTube channel. But he basically, talks about hiring us from day one to kind of quarterback that recovery process. He couldn't have been happier with what we were able to produce for the association. That's the end of it. I hope we covered everything. If you have questions, I didn't really check the chat, so I'll look at it now. But this is my contact information. Obviously, we work, we're year round. We specialize in these hurricane claims, but if you have pipe breaks, fires that happening at your property, we'll come out, take a look, coach you through it, advise whether or not to file a claim. Obviously, we'd love the opportunity for the business, but as I mentioned before, not all damage requires an insurance claim. We can also work through your hurricane preparedness plans, and if you want us to come in, talk to your boards, talk to your association tenants about their individual property policies, be happy to. And if you scan that QR code, get a cool link to all my contact information and more about me. And feel free to add me on LinkedIn, try to post relevant content to insurance and property damage. But I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to Campbell for putting this together. And I hope we get to talk more soon. So let me go into the Q&A here. So it says, after each lawsuit, do you legally have to put insurance carrier on notice? We're getting a lot of friction between the broker and attorneys, where the attorney feels like the broker is giving the runaround and not following up in a timely manner. So yes. So typically, I'm assuming there was a claim and you're thinking about sending it to a lawsuit. If the claim doesn't get resolved, you can hire representation. There's another option where you get a lawyer to write what's called a civil remedy notice. So they file the civil remedy notice, which basically says, hey, look, we're trying to resolve this claim without going into a lawsuit. They typically have 30 days, I believe, don't quote me on that, to respond and alleviate the situation. And then if they don't, then you can file suit. So, it's kind of giving everybody a fair warning to do the right thing in a timely manner. May I please have the course and provider number for this presentation? Yes, it is on the first slide. Shoot. I have a technical difficulty here. Sorry, I don't have it for you right now. Oh, 1 second. I apologize. So provider number is 000540. And here, I'll just try and put this in the chat. Answer. There you go. I just sent it. Please address condominiums that are single-family homes and townhomes, or will the class be exclusive to multi-level buildings? So as long as it's insured by a condominium association, this applies. Homeowners associations are a little different. There are still common elements such as like clubhouses, pools, gyms. What the common elements still apply. That would be where the shared interest, right? Like you pay HOA fees and dues. That's what that goes towards. And then with your individual properties, that would be covered by your individual policy. And typically, when we work with homeowners associations, we handle the association claim, and then we offer our help to any of the individual homeowners that want our representation. They're not obligated to sign up with us, but we're happy to work their claims. How would we know if a broker is getting kickbacks? Oh man, it's a good question. you can simply ask them. They'll probably chuckle and won't, I wouldn't phrase it that way, but ask them if they've been on any retreats to just like QBE's annual getaway. You can also check their LinkedIn profiles, see if they're wining and dining with anybody from insurance companies. That's one way to do it. And you can kind of ask around the reputation of certain association, certain brokers or agents. If the source of the leak is a common pipe, who pays what in a condo? All right, so that can be tricky. What you want to have happen is the person who discovers the leak. So let's say it's like at a fifth floor unit. The fifth floor unit owner is going to file an insurance claim under their policy if the damage is bad. If it's spread to somebody below them, the unit on the fourth floor is going to file a claim under their individual policy. Those two are going to basically they're going to get paid. They're going to make the repairs behind the scenes. The unit owner, like the insurance company for the fourth floor, is going to go after the one on the fifth floor to pay them to reimburse them for that damage. It's called subrogation. Doesn't really affect anybody day to day. But if the pipe, if it's a pipe that's running through both, the association would probably have to cover the repair for replacing that pipe that affects everybody. So, individual unit owners are going to have to cover their stuff and their contents, but the association, like we had the situation in downtown Miami where there was a common element pipe that broke and affected about like 20 units. The association has to cover the cost. The association insurance company covers that cost for access to the pipe, replacing the pipe, and the drywall. So one of the big things to remember is general guidelines. Drywall in is drywall inside to like the walls and the pipes and everything behind the drywall is the response, and common elements are the association. Paint and all the stuff in the unit, that is the responsibility of the individual unit owner. Next one, I thought in condos, the windows belong to the owner. So yes, the windows belong to the owner. The owners are responsible for day-to-day maintenance. If they want to replace it, that's up to them. But in a hurricane situation, the association is going to cover the repairs of the windows because it's like a fenestration system. So it's a little confusing, but it's the unit owner first, and then in a hurricane named storm situation, the association's insurance will cover the cost of the windows being replaced. Do you do before and after disaster management for condos? Yes, we do. So we'll consult on your policy, look at your preparedness plans, offer suggestions, and then after a disaster, fire, whatever, day-to-day claims, we quarterback that, take over the process. We keep the association manager abreast of what's happening, communicate with the board and the individual unit owners affected, just kind of keep everybody in the loop. We got plenty of testimonials on our YouTube page that you can look at from condo managers that we worked with. If you're sharing a presentation. Oh, no. Nobody saw my PowerPoint? Not seeing any slides, only me. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I just saw this now. What about slip and falls? What are the main steps for handling those claims? Putting insurer on notice, getting it come out to pocket. Okay. So slip and falls, that's under your liability insurance. Yeah, you're gonna have to put your insurer on notice, get an attorney involved. It's generally how that works. And then how do we get paid? So we take a percentage of the recovery, typically 10% to, we drop it down sometimes to 8%. People bring us in afterwards and we get we work on a contingent fee, whatever we're able to recover above what you've already been paid. We take a percentage of that as well. So we typically build it in the claim. and we never really come into situations where, you know, our fee negatively affects the reconstruction or the build. How are premium increases determined? Example, number of claims, severity of size, claims type. Yeah, so all those play into what your renewal rate is going to be. If you have a claims history where you're filing for like every single thing, your rates are going to go up more so than, you know, your neighbors. However, if it's, you know, an act of God, like something out of your control, like a hurricane, natural disaster, your premium increases should be consistent with everybody around you's increases. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into determining your premium increase, especially like the age of the building. What do you recommend as the best home condo insurance company in South Florida? So QBE is pretty good. Chubb, if you're able to get it, they're pretty good. They don't really insure that many condos. I know Citizens is the insurer of last resort. I would try to do anything possible to stay out of Citizens. Oh man, we're not sharing your screen. We see nothing but you. I'm sorry. My management company, sorry if you guys missed the last, I don't know, 10 slides or so. They can hopefully, you know, everyone gets a copy of the presentation afterwards. I probably didn't hit share on my screen. My management company hires a restoration company after a small kitchen fire, and we were billed thousands of dollars. Was that a smart move? So I'm assuming if it was your kitchen that caught on fire, and not an assessment they were talking about to all the unit owners, then yeah, like, you know, it's your responsibility to cover that. However, if it was like a kitchen fire and there was smoke throughout, you know, the hallway, it spread into other common units, you know, that might have not been a smart move. But it just sounds like it was limited to you, and you had to cover that expense. So the party that caused the loss responsible for all damages, or is each party affected should have their own insurance coverage for damages, let's say if there is no subrogation. So not all the damages is the party that caused the loss, right, responsible for all damages. I wouldn't say all damages. Your insurance company is going to pay for, let's say like somebody above you caused damage to your property. You still file it with your claim and put it on the, like, you know, your insurance company is going to go after the other unit owner. That's typically how that works. They're really, I've never seen it where it doesn't get subrogated like that. We have a window leak and the owner is claiming that association repairs their floor because they don't have insurance. No, that's not true. So it's still on them to make those repairs, unless, you know, it was caused by a storm. I didn't see slides either. Oh man. In a case of leak flooding to common areas, who should call the water remediation company? The association or the owner with the leaking water heater, for example. So if it started in an individual unit, they should you know, call a plumber to stop from getting worse. And then the association should get a mitigation company out there to, you know, start remediating the problem and cleaning it up. It's the association or the owner with the leaking. Okay. Yeah, so it'll start with the owner taking care of like their individual unit, and then the association taking care of the common areas. And sometimes, like, you know, the remediation company will just go in, you know, it'll just be one company doing it all, and then they'll bill the individual unit owner individually for what was being done in the individual unit. What components, if renovated, like elevators, windows, etc., help bring insurance rates down? Yeah, so updating elevator systems, updating, like, you know, if you can put in place, you know, like new updated electrical, upgrading your roof can help bring rates down. There's like some like flood pumps now that you can install. There's barriers that you can put up. to help with flooding. So I would talk to your agent more about that. Those are just some of the things I know that I've heard agents talk about, help bring down those rates.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.